So today I welcome you to another edition of Heath's Hints webinars on mental training. Martin will be getting into the thick of the topic mental training in a moment. Just a couple of quick ground rules. Please ensure your mics are muted and your webcams are off. Any questions that you have, given the size of this webinar with over 100 people registered and at least 50 plus already online, if you can please, any questions, type in the chat box and I will ask as we go or ask them at the end of the webinar. But we do encourage you to ask questions. Just please type them in the chat box just so we can keep this webinar a little bit controlled. Otherwise, we hope you enjoyed today's Heath's Hints webinar. Take it away, Martin.
Thanks, Jeff. Hey everyone, thanks for registering and coming on. I will add that Danielle is number 33 in the world, which is an amazing achievement. I think she might get to number 3 at some point, but it'd be nice if we can support her with that vote. Be a nice milestone for her. I think she's definitely on the right path. So today we're going to talk about mental training. Can we go to the next slide, Jeff? Actually, practical and transferable mental skill building. The reason I said practical, because we'll go to the next slide. I'll give a bit of a disclaimer because I'm not a psychologist. I'm not an authority on mental training. This is I did many years ago study psychology, sports science, sports psychology. But this, the information I'm going to present is actually more my experience or observation, competing at a high level and coaching at a high level. And some of the things that are kind of useful to build some skills. So hopefully, like most of these things, it's like you're going to pick up a couple of skills. You're going to pick up, or hopefully a couple of tips that go, okay, and maybe knit that in or try to knit it into what you do. So that's hopefully what we can try and offer today. So, and as I said here in the slide, it's not exhaustive. Psychology is really, what psychology does as a discipline is to try to kind of try to find the things that make us all the same. But there's huge amount of personality differences in how we respond to different things, and especially in sport as well. It tends to be a grey area. Sports psychology is not a science. It's even though there are certain underpinnings, but there are huge differences between people, and a lot of the time you're going to have to find your own way in some way. As part of the quest of being an athlete is to try to figure things out in some way, and not just have a coach or guide you or someone else tell you what to do, but to kind of figure it out yourself. And but it is a big area. It can help you if you have the right attitude, approach, and the right way of coping with pressure. It can really help you be very successful. And there are transferable skills to as you move on in your life. I mean, that's definitely one of the reasons why sport exists in the first place. But what I would say also is that if you do have any kind of serious issues mentally, that you've tried and you can't get over yourself, that you can go to a sports psychologist, and I don't think it's going to be a cure-all, but they can give you some help. So they're certainly going to be able to give you more specific information than I can give you here. So anyway, that's my disclaimer, and then I'm going to try and tell you hopefully some good information that you can use. So next slide. Just what we're going to talk about a little bit about motivation at the start. That's obviously a huge thing. Growth mindset. Well, the motivation is also for parents and coaches as well. The coaches might know this, the parents might also know this, but it's probably good to have a little reminder. Growth mindset, the kind of belief that you can do things and breaking down some barriers, creating good habits, which we did talk about that before in another webinar, but I think it's also part of mental training. So I've added in a slide there. Having a good attitude is incredibly important. Mental strength, how to build it, concentration, focus, how to deal with anxiety, and also having that arousal level, which is an odd word, but it's actually a scientific word. It's just trying to find that level where you can operate, you can perform the best. Also, this narrow and wide focus thing that we did talk about in another webinar as well, how that can, it's definitely part of becoming a good athlete and also a squash player. Any kind of racket sport where you're dealing with different variables, you need to be able to sort of zone in on what you're doing, but also pan out to see how it all fits together. Confidence, and then just kind of the result, what you're looking for, and a very quick summary. So that's what we'll be talking about today. Next slide. So a little bit of theory, self-determination theory is by Richard Ryan and Edward Deci, and really, it's pretty much accepted now. It's been around for quite a while, and a couple of things. It's about motivation. It's about how what produces the best motivation, what produces the best performance, what type of motivation produces the best performance, so there's two main kinds. There's the controlled motivation, which is, you know, the hockey dad sitting at the side of the rink and, you know, just being a little bit more authoritarian, or authoritarian coaches kind of telling you what to do. It's not necessarily you that's doing it. You're kind of getting led, and with the, you know, threat of discipline, or kind of, you know, avoiding punishment, or you feeling kind of pressure or an obligation to perform. You might have some level of success and good performance, but it's not as effective as another way, which is autonomous motivation, which is where it's your volition, it's you that that's deciding to do this. And it's you know, it's probably one of the reasons why kids are so good at video games these days, is that they want to do it. It's entertaining. They want to do it. They become unbelievably good at it, and it's because they can control it. It's their volition, and so you get enjoyment and interest out of it as well. So so the result is that if it's more autonomous, the result is high performance, better feeling of wellness, more engagement, and it's definitely with autonomous motivation. But they also relate it to every human has basic psychological needs, and they relate that to competence, relatedness, and autonomy. Competence is this feeling that you're improving, that you're becoming good at something. So the work that you're putting in, you become better at it. Relatedness is how you interact with other. It can either be how you apply that knowledge and then use it to relate to others, or the environment. Doing this thing helps you relate to others just through the environment that you're in. And the autonomy is obviously just you know, it's you that decides. It's so you can go on and you can hit balls by yourself, and that you control that. So, and there's two types of the autonomous motivation. It's intrinsic and extrinsic. It's better if it's intrinsic, but of what they've found is that extrinsic motivation, so that's, you know, achieving a higher ranking, beating a certain player. It could be getting into college, could be become part of the national team, whatever it might be. You can internalize the extrinsic stuff as well. So they say that intrinsic motivation is better, but if the extrinsic stuff is okay too, you can internalize it over a period of time. So what does that mean for? So there's a little bit of a sort of background on the theory. What does that mean? How do we apply it to squash? That's the next slide. So it means that if you're a parent or a coach, it means that you want to try to foster enjoyment and autonomy in your kids and students. If you're forcing them into something, and you know, I'm a parent, and so I know sometimes you kind of, you know, you got to give a little push. You can't just let the kids decide everything that they want to do. If you want to get a better performance, you need to allow them to be creative and have fun in what they're doing. So rather than everything be incredibly structured. So if you're sending kids to, you know, 2 lessons a week and they don't have time to really think about it themselves, or to just enjoy it and just get on and play, they'll probably, it's not going to yield the best result. It's not the best way of helping your kids or your pupils achieve. So going on and being able to just hit the ball around the court, having some solo, ghosting, just unstructured fun play, not just the kind of lessons and training and kind of forced training because there's a huge goal at the end of it. You got to allow some space in there to enjoy it. And so quite often in my role, people are asking me, well, why are the Egyptians so successful? What's the reason? You know, and there are obviously a lot of different reasons that, you know, in terms of the environment and you know, the number of players and things like that. You know, the rewards relatively are better if you're successful. But one of the main things, just from observation, is that those kids love it. I mean, they love the game. They're on there. They're trying to fake out each other. They're probably learning more from being on court and just having fun and trying out different things than they are, and copying better players and things like this, trying to beat their buddy, than they are in the training environment. The training helps to kind of guide that, whereas the real kind of learning is through just that unstructured play. So it's a slightly different understanding of this. The structured play and the structured training is important. And that's not what I'm not saying that's not important. Of course it is. But you need to have that component. That has to be there. That creativity, that fun, that learning has to be there to increase motivation, which will eventually increase performance. And it's also, in terms of the, the students, or if there's players watching this, it's not just about the results. So the extrinsic thing is important, but it's not just about the results. It's focusing on the process. So if you enjoy hitting a ball better, if you're more relaxed, if you enjoy just the moving around the squash court and hitting and just and enjoying the game, or enjoying just hitting the ball against the wall, if you do that, you're going to get better. And it's so I was saying it's not just about the end result all the time. It's about this process, enjoying the process. So another thing is that I mean, just to kind of mention the intrinsic. I think I mentioned this before. The intrinsic motivation is better for resiliency. Like through hard times, like the intrinsic motivation gets you through because you want to do something anyway. Whereas the extrinsic thing can change. I mean, your goals can change, and it's or maybe you can readjust, and that all of a sudden that doesn't become as important. So learning how to have fun and enjoy it increases intrinsic motivation. There's more likelihood for you to stay with it longer. I just put in a little bit of a goal setting that can help drive you. If it's if the goals are too structured and you have to achieve them, then that's probably not going to be helpful. But if you set them a little bit higher, but still within the bounds of possibility, then that's going to be helpful. Next slide. So growth mindset, and I'll just give you this quote there to start off with. In a growth mindset, people believe that the most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent are just the starting point. This view creates a love of learning and a resilience that is essential for great accomplishment. So it's and as I said, it's not purely focused on the outcome, but it's on the value of the process. Hitting the ball, moving around the court, enjoying getting better, enjoying hitting that shot that your favorite player can hit. And it's something that I've observed, and it's something that I went through as well. Is that you naturally, the culture that you grow up in, the people around about you. I mean, it's the fact of humanity is that you kind of pigeonhole people. It's okay, this is the way that you are. Like this is, he's funny, he's talented, he's athletic, he's this, he's that. And you tend to kind of, after a while, you internalize this. And really, and these all might be true, but it doesn't necessarily define your potential. Your potential is limitless. It's up to you what you decide to do, and then if you focus on it, you can adjust and you can make something happen. And you've got to have an understanding of that of that ability. And it's difficult to kind of I can explain it to you, and you've probably heard it many times before, but it's true though. I mean, it is true, is that you can define yourself, and obviously within the bounds of possibility. Without physics, I suppose you'd say, but beyond that, or sort of before that, then it's up to you. It really is up to you. And it's used. The way that you can help yourself with this is that don't tend to see yourself in a certain way. Yeah, you might have those skills, those attributes right now, but don't think about that as your future potential. But think of that as being whatever you decide to invest in and focus on and practice and get better at. And go through this process. That's what you can do. And one little trick that can help you is by the language that you use. Just positive language. And so that's and the words that you use. I mean, I don't know the psychological reason behind this, but really, if you're using those words, there's like another part of your brain, your kind of inner, subconscious reptilian part of your brain that hears that and it responds to that, and that's how it will respond. If you give it positive words, and then it will pick up. Oh, it's possible. It's you can do this. Like I learned a lot. It's a process. I can get there. If I focus, of course I can achieve that. It's just this understanding and this the kind of feedback that your brain needs to be able to see that these things are possibilities. If you use negative language, then that's kind of going to be the result. So it's I think when you look at growth mindset, if you look at the people that talk about this, they'll say, you're even looking in the mirror and you're using, you're telling yourself you can do this positive self-talk. And so I don't know whether that's necessary. I think that adjusting your language and having a positive internal view of yourself and using positive language is definitely going to help. And then it's up to you whether you do the other side, the kind of more extreme stuff where you're looking in a mirror. But it's certainly worth thinking about, and it's worth adjusting your attitude towards believing that it's possible, that whatever you decide to focus on is possible. Don't think that everything you've done up until now is fixed. Think of whatever it's an open field after this. It's just it's an open space that you can fill with whatever you want. So, and it's an important part, and you do see this with top athletes or any great performers. I put in like here that Einstein was an average student, and that's true. I mean, he was an average student. It wasn't until he became a patent clerk and he had some time that he decided to focus on this himself. It was a self project, and changed the world. So, there's a lot of, and there's one story out of many. But it's something you'll see that any high achievers that have this mindset and that positive feeling of the ability that they've got the ability to change things. Next slide. I'm not going to talk too much about this because I talked about this before, but the creating good habits it is in some way mental training, because it's you don't want to have to think about things all the time. You don't want everything to be have to go through a process every time you do something that you should be habitual. The example I gave the last time was brushing your teeth and just trying to minimize the number of steps that you take to do this. If you're having to go into the drawers and unscrew toothpaste and there's an 8-step process, then when you're feeling tired you might not do it. Whereas if it's boom boom boom, it's a very simple process, then you're going to do it. So use that, remove the barriers, reduce the number of steps, make things very easy to do the good habits that you need to do to be a top performer, which is preparing well, just making sure that your mental preparation, your breathing, your warm up, your focus when you're doing something, your warm down, your nutrition, your sleep, like make all of these things habitual, so you don't need to think about it. It just gives you a baseline or a platform to be able to be successful. So I think that's the main takeaway from this part here. I've put in another couple of things like test yourself occasionally to build confidence. I think you can make that a habit. So once every 6 weeks, you can put yourself through like some really, really hard work for 2 or 3 days. You don't need to do it all the time, but just to prove it to yourself, I think that's a good habit. And it's also a habit to get into that you're in a competitive arena, that you want to feel like you're working harder or smarter or more efficiently than everyone else. And if you are doing that, then the likelihood is that you're going to carry a lot of confidence with you. So anyway, those are good habits that you can look at later, but reducing the number of steps, making things simple, and then focusing on these habits that you want to have that are going to create success. Next slide. Attitude, it's a huge thing, especially for juniors, having the right attitudes. I've got to say that I think I see very positive attitudes most of the time whenever I'm at junior tournaments, or I think that's mostly what I see, but not all the time. The ability to handle pressure and bad luck and things like this, these are obviously things that you learn over a period of time. But the important thing about this is that you can control this. One thing is definitely true is that bad luck, bad decisions, things that are, bad things that happen to you that are just out with your control, like you don't get to eat the right lunch before you play a match, and it's there's the ability to be able to, okay, if something's wrong, try and fix it. If you don't have the ability to be able to fix it, then you have to accept it. You have to have an attitude where you have to accept the situation, and then it's like, okay, this is the new normal. Then you get on with it, and that's and you control your response. You might want to chuck your toys out your playpen, but it's not going to help you. Maybe there's a kind of initial kind of like, that's a natural response. But then after that, refocus, have the right attitude. Bad luck happens, bad decisions happen, certain things happen beyond my control. I can't control this. This is the new normal. Get on with it. It's an important kind of process to go through. The other thing is, and it's always going to happen. I mean, that's the reality. It's always going to happen. It's not, the referee's not out to get you. No one's there to kind of make life hard for you. That's you might feel that in a certain day, but even if that's true, you can't control it. So get on with it. The other thing is, and I've noticed this with the very, very top performers, I think in any sport, they have respect, and that's not, the respect for the whole environment that they're in, respect for the game, for yourself, your opponent, the opportunity to be there and compete like that, the challenge, like it's not challenging or threatening to you. It's like they enjoy the challenge, the referee, like respect for the referee, respect for the spectators, respect for the fact that you have an opportunity to be able to perform and for someone to challenge you, and then for you to focus and bring out the best in yourself. It's like it would be boring if there wasn't a challenge. So the challenge is actually there for you to practice being under pressure and coming out with like the best things about that you have, you know, and you need a positive attitude to be able to do that. So having an idea about respect for everything around you, and respect for the, you know, why you're there, and I think that's an important attitude to have, and it's certainly one that all top players have. Pressure is a privilege, and it really is. It's there's not many. I mean, I suppose there is pressure in work and family life, and, you know, driving through cities and things like this, just like the regular things that people do every day. But that pressure where you kind of like you can create that within sport, where if you find the right player to compete against you, that brings that is pressure, or it's that you're competing for a team and there's pressure upon you. Like use it as an opportunity. Don't shy away from it. Use it like you have a positive attitude towards pressure, and use it as this feeling that okay, this is great. This allows me to focus and bring out the best within myself. And if I practice hard enough, or you can trust yourself in some way to come up with it. And if you try your best, and if it doesn't work, I mean, that's the reality. There's only, you know, it's a 50-50 shot. There's only one person can win on the day. But having the right attitude to pressure and having respect, that will bring out probably the best of yourself. The other thing about competition is that, you know, especially in squash, is that there are a lot of different variables, and it's a problem to be solved, and it really is. I mean, there's different ways. You don't have to compete with someone on their skill set. You're trying to figure out a way for you to win, figure out your skill set, what to focus on. You know, try to take advantage of their weaknesses. You know, they might be better at 9 out of 10 things than you are, but if you manage to shape the game into that 1 out of 10 things that you're better than they are, then you can win. And so having an attitude that there is always a little crack of light in your games where you can win, and you don't get down or dejected that this person's just so much better at these 9 other things. Squash allows you to do that. It allows you to be able to kind of shape the game in a way that allows your 1 or 2 or 3 skills that are better than this other player, and then you could win on that day. It's part of the game. So see it as a problem to be solved rather than kind of feel dejected. I think that's my takeaway there. Next slide. Mental strength. So I mean, it's such a grey area, but I thought I'd have something on this. And it's also transferable as well. It's driven by a belief that you can handle pain, doubt, hardship, like any of the things and it's just a resilience. I mean, really, that's what mental strength is. It's resilience. It's the ability to be able to have, you know, like a lot of pressure upon you, but then to respond in the right way. And again, it's a little bit similar to having a good attitude. You need a good attitude before mental strength. Once you have the right attitude, then you've got to deal with it. That's really what it comes to. Attitude is the baseline. Mental strength is going through the process. And really, you know, what I think I want you to take away here is that you go through this anyway. You go through this when you play, but there are a couple of little tricks that you can use to help you. But really the underpinning is that your brain's always going to protect your body. I mean, that's the reason we've evolved for, you know, 4 billion years, is that our brain will always protect us. But the reality is that our bodies are capable of coping way further than our brains will protect us. So it's a kind of, I don't want this to be a liability issue. I want to say that I'm not telling you guys anything or giving you things that you should do, and you know, you obviously need to be careful with how you practice this kind of stuff. So it is on you, but I can give you a couple of things that I've done and I see other people do, and definitely does build some mental strength. And it's transferable as well. You know, you're always going to go through hardship, pressure, unforeseen circumstances as you move through life. Your parents, coaches, whoever, that's just the feature of life. And sport is almost a way to kind of practice dealing with this stuff. And so we're dealing with it, and then building the skills of being resilient, being mentally strong, having calmness under pressure, problem solving, and really that's kind of the process that you're going through right now. So there are a couple of little things that you can practice. So when you're training, and I talked about this in the training webinar, is that to get a training effect, it needs to be a little bit extra. Like so when you're doing push-ups, it's like as soon as you reach fatigue, it's those extra 5 push-ups that you do where you're just squeezing them out. That's what's going to create the training effect. And it's the same in anything, the same mentally, the same in any exercise that you're going to do. It's that extra 5% that is actually going to create the training effect, which allows you to be stronger. And then you kind of, come back the next day or 2 days later, and you do another 5%, and it's just this growing, just this growing machine at some point. Another couple of things, so breath holding, don't do it underwater just in case. You practice at your own risk. But breath holding, the same thing is that the feeling of that impulse where you really want to breathe, your body's telling you there, your brain's telling you that you really need to breathe. The reality is that your body's fine probably for another couple of minutes, but so you don't have to do a couple of minutes, but just learning how to understand that impulse, not listen to it, and then go, it might be 10 seconds longer, 5 seconds longer, 20 seconds longer. But I think the important thing is not being a breath control expert. I think it is just learning how to understand that impulse, learning that you have a little bit more control over that, how you respond. So you learn how to operate with calmness under pressure. Something that's also good for you is taking cold showers. Cold ice baths, if you can, 2 to 3 minutes is very good for your vascular system. It actually helps you almost become a fitter person. If you can, but it also helps you mentally. It helps you. No one wants to get in a cold shower, but it does help you. The ability to be able to do it, feel this uncomfortable feeling, and then your body adapts to it. Your body will. So it's that kind of, again, feeling of being uncomfortable. Just digging through that kind of uncomfortable feeling for a minute or 2 minutes, but then it's easy. It's easy after that. Your body adapts. A game that I play with my son is we offer each other our feet, or the pillow over your face, and it's just that, and the other person can tickle your feet for as long as they want. It's the most painful thing in the world, but if you can handle it for a while, after about 40 seconds, like everything just goes numb. So it's the impulse control, and I think that's, and there's probably lots of other ways you can practice mental strength and resiliency, and in fact there definitely are. That's me just giving you a couple of little fun things that you can do just to manage the impulse that will, makes you want to quit. But just once you understand it, once you have the understanding that that's, you can go beyond that, then that'll help you in your game as well. Here's a good Rocky quote for you, which I think is great, actually. It's not how hard you hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. And it's true. I mean, it's true in sport and it's true in life. And that's just, it's a nice thing to feel that it's not just about your highest performance, it's your ability to be resilient, take it, and keep moving forward. Next slide. So, I don't know, however, how many of you suffer from, nerves and anxiety. I would assume it's probably pretty close to 100%, depending upon the situation that you're in. So I thought I'd mention this. There's a thing called an arousal level in sport, and that's how, kind of how hyped you are or how relaxed you are. What I find is that if you're going to give a number, where most people think, well, I want to be pretty hyped, but I don't want to be overly hyped. I want to have a certain calmness, but I definitely want to be sharp and ready. So you're kind of looking for this kind of 7 out of 10. Some people are 6, some people are 8. It tends to kind of settle around about this kind of 7 out of 10 level. So what you can do is you can adjust once you know that number that you operate best in. Then try to create that before you go on court. However you do it. So some people might be like being very relaxed and like talking to people, and some people just want to be very focused and pretty hyped and just be by themselves. So find what's right for you. Another thing that can really help with nerves and anxiety is a long warm up. So you do almost like a little mini workout before you perform. And that's kind of, I'm talking in the kind of 40 minutes, even up to an hour before. I know not all of you have the time to do this, but when you do have the time, try to make your preparation like that. So I would always find warming up for, let's say, 30 minutes, maybe even a little bit longer if I'm hitting balls, doing a little bit of ghosting as well, and then relaxing. We're relaxing for about 10 minutes before or 15 minutes before you play. And what you find is that your endorphins go throughout your whole body. You feel your muscles are very relaxed, everything's ready. and your brain is a little bit more relaxed at that and happier at that point as well. So it's definitely something that it's not just from the inside out. You can also do like this little mini workout, which will help you get relaxed as well. Yoga is again, it's useful in not necessarily before you play. I wouldn't recommend that necessarily, but it's also useful. Like, it's almost good for mental training as well, because what you're doing when you do yoga is that or any kind of stretching, is that your body, is under stress. It's like, it doesn't want to be in like a stressed, like this kind of stretched position, so it kind of tightens up. And what you do, what yoga really is then learning how to deal with that impulse by breathing, relaxing, being in this kind of stretched position. But then once you relax and once you breathe, then you can also stretch again, and you can just keep that process going. And again, it's this kind of impulse control, through relaxation and through your breathing. And the same with meditation as well. It's probably a good idea, and it's not just about, again, before playing a match, I'm saying this, it's good just to knit into your life. So just even sitting here, you can just take a few minutes, close your eyes, focus on breathing, and just relax your body, relax your shoulders, relax your faces, your muscles in your face, and smile just a little bit, and it just kind of lift yourself out a little bit. Focus on your breathing. And just for 10-20 seconds, you can just totally change like how you're operating through the day. It's not just just doing stuff through the day. You can just take these little moments, and that helps you. And what that'll do, it helps you to understand that you get to relax very quickly. And what that will do is it will allow you, when you do get kind of overwhelmed in a game or before a game, you can just have this little release where you just release yourself from the situation. And it's quite useful. It's a nice, useful thing to do every now and again. Just even throughout a regular day, just take 20 seconds, just do it, just decompress. The positive self-talk as well. That is a couple of little tricks in this, like the kind of a couple of cognitive tricks that you can use. The positive self-talk. You can do this. Not how stupid you are. Why you're getting so anxious about things. Oh, you screwed up there. It's about. I think someone has their mic on, eh? If you can switch your mic off. Thank you. The positive self-talk definitely helps. And also the cognitive tricks like thought stopping. I'm not an expert in this. I think, again, that's one of those things that you need to go to a psychologist, a sports psychologist, to kind of help with and how to use it. But those little cognitive tricks definitely help. Humor, listening to your comedy or just sort of feeling pretty relaxed and laughing as well before you play. I think that's quite useful as well. So hopefully there's a couple little tricks that you can use there, and that'll help you. Next slide. I don't want to focus too much on this, but this is something I mentioned in other webinars, just about narrow versus wide focus. This is not, if this is the first webinar that people have been on, this is a feature of squash, the ability to be able to hit a ball or sort of get your feet set up and then hit the shot that you want to hit. But also you're part of a rally, also you're part of a game, also you're part of this, the tactical awareness of what's going on in a match and how it changes as people get more tired, and you're always oscillating between this narrow and wide focus, and it is a mental thing. It's a skill. It's a mental skill that you have. One way to practice it is through training. So when you're training is to be able to, when you're focusing on your footwork or breaking it down and focusing on certain things, but then putting it all back together. One way you can do it before you play is to figure out how you're going to win one rally against that player. But that might be very different from how you win the whole match. So you focus on maybe technical things initially, like they're not so good in that area, or they're not good up high backhand or something like this. And so that's how you're going to create loose shots and be able to finish off the rally by playing like this. But it might not be relate to you're winning the battle, but you're not winning the war necessarily. Like, how are you going to win the match? So you put it into larger context, and it's that, well, I'm going to win the match probably because he's going to get, or she's going to get lose focus, get tired physically. They start playing a little bit loose to lose their concentration. So I'm going to take advantage after a certain amount of time. So I mean, these are not incredibly specific tips on narrow against wide focus, but it's something that you've got to think about. You have to think about how, like, that being a good competitor means that you have to kind of have the narrow focus of hitting a shot or winning a rally, but you've also got this wide focus of being able to see what's going on in the larger picture. So I think you can go through some of these bullet points by yourself. Next slide. Confidence is, I mean, I think it's one of these things that you don't really want fake confidence. Like, faking it is not really what you want to do, but you kind of need it to get to that first step. So the reality is that when you get to the first step and when you prove it to yourself, it's like, now I know I can do it, and I just need to replicate that. Or once you know that you can overcome your expectations and overcome or beat that player that you didn't think you could beat, now you know you can do it, and it becomes easier. And that breaking of the barrier helps you break down, future barriers as well. But you got to get to that stage first. So there is a little bit of a belief, and kind of faking that belief is that you're just kind of faking the belief that, okay, you can beat that person, even though you've never done it before. You still have to believe it, that you can do it. And the reality is you can, but you might internally not really believe it. But you got to convince yourself that you do believe that. But then when you do it, then it becomes easier. Then you have the confidence, the knowledge to be able to kind of repeat it and keep on getting wins. So that's my advice for confidence, is that you kind of you don't want to have this false confidence throughout the whole of your development, but you kind of got to have it just to kind of break through. You got to kind of fake it in some ways just to break through the barriers that are there for you. But once you know that you can compete and win above your expectations, then you can use that as you move through. What else is here? So when you hit a wall, you see it as an obstacle to be overcome. I mean, that's, rather than, if you don't have confidence, you're not going to be able to, you're going to see obstacles as obstacles, not as challenges. Whereas when you have confidence, you're like, okay, well, you can understand, you can navigate, you got some skills that you can navigate around these things and figure out how to do it. I think that's it's useful to confidence will give you that ability. The growth mindset will give you an inner confidence. So I think that kind of relates to what I'm saying about this kind of faking it until you're making it, is that if you believe that you have, you decide your future, and then that you'll get an inner confidence from that as well. And also just stay humble. I mean, confidence is something that you want to have. It's more of an internal feeling rather than an outward expression. So I think it's probably most of you are like this anyway, but I think it's useful to be able to stay humble while you have an inner confidence. Next slide. So the result is really, it's, I've just given a little thing that I think I wrote this in, I think it was in the best practices document that I wrote, and it was really about just having the right attitude and what it's like to observe a top athlete. And it's the inner calmness, confidence, just a very respectful attitude. You can handle all the swings and momentum, but because they're going to happen, and all the bad luck and all the things that can go wrong. You don't worry about the things that you can't control, and you've got a presence of mind that, as things you can progress, you can adjust, and you don't shy away from pressure. You bring out, all top performers play better in pressure moments because they focus better, and it is organic. It's organic in some way. So if you try to control everything and and be like a bit of a robot, then you're going to be brittle. You have to be a little bit flexible. But you're okay being flexible because you have that inner confidence and inner calmness that you can respond to the things that come along. So I think that's kind of the result that you're going for. That's the kind of total result, the holistic result of what you're trying to achieve. And there's plenty of examples out there, to show you that when you look at some of the great athletes. And the feeling is that before you play, there's an inner strength or a trust in your own abilities. You're not trying to control everything. You're trying to do everything you can with the things you can control. But you have your trust in your own abilities to adjust, and even if pressure or bad luck happens, you can deal with it. That's the feeling that you want to try and achieve. Next slide. So just a little summary, probably more useful, just about some of the things some of the takeaways here. In terms of motivation, have curiosity and fun with the game. Try out different things. knit that into your training, just that little bit of kind of unstructured play. Is going to be very important. It's going to help you enjoy the game, and eventually your performance is going to be better. It's not just about incredibly hard training all the time. You train harder and smarter than everyone else. That's undoubtedly true. That helps gives you a confidence that you can't really. It's difficult to replicate just by faking it. Is that you do need to have that inner confidence from the hard work that you've done. Focusing on the process, and then the outcomes will come. You don't need to try and control that all the time. Enjoy it. Enjoy the process. Use positive language, self-talk if you need to. Create good habits with a few steps. Remove the steps and the barriers just so you can repeat them over and over again. Focus on what you can control. If things do change, as they will, adjust, adapt, new normal. Now adopt the attitude that allows you to compete in that new normal. That little extra 5% makes all the difference. That is what training is all about. Respect for everything, respect for yourself, for your opponent, for the game, for the facilities, for the referees, for everything else. Like, it's just carry respect with you wherever you go. View pressure as an opportunity to bring out the best in you. So use it like that the ability to be under pressure in a manufactured arena, in a safe place, on a squash court, where you can bring out the best in yourself mentally, physically, tactically. You want that. That's an opportunity, and it's a privilege. Do your long warm-up to calm your body and mind if you do suffer from nerves and anxiety, like a long warm-up, almost like a mini workout before. And be resilient. Be resilient. It's not how hard you can hit necessarily. It's how much you can take and then still be positive, adapt to the new normal, keep moving forward. And so, that's it. That's today's webinar. Very qualitative. I've tried to give you a couple little tips that are kind of based upon good science. Hopefully that's helpful, and I'll certainly answer any questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Martin. That was a wonderful presentation. We now open the floor to questions. If you have questions, please feel free to type it in the chat box. First question for you, Martin, comes from Clifford. I don't know if you'll have an answer to this right off the bat or if it might be something for follow-up, but Clifford asked if there's any sports psychologists out there that you would recommend that you might be aware of.
Well, I mean, it depends where you are, but I don't know any that off the top of my head. I think there are a couple that you can even do this online. You don't have to be in the same place, but there were a couple that the high performance team, the national team, were using. They offered their services pro bono, so I can get in touch with them, and maybe Jeff can put it on the website, or you can email me about it, and I'll get you a couple of names that you can use, and they'll conduct webinars and phone calls just to help you if that's going to be useful.
Great, thanks, Martin. Any other questions? We welcome all questions. Question from Leonard Lai. I believe Leonard's from Newfoundland, if I recall. He asks, how would you stop parents or grandparents from giving too much pressure, like putting too much pressure on their kids?
Show them this. Show them this and tell them the high performance director says that that you're going to have a better performance if you're allowed a little bit, if you're allowed to enjoy it, if you're allowed to enjoy the process, if it's not just result driven all the time, if you can have fun with it. It doesn't always have to be structured and always focused on a goal. It's actually eventually going to lead to higher performance if you're allowed that space to be like a little kid and be curious and play with it. And then quote the Egyptians as part of this. This is what the Egyptians do, and they're, for the last 15 years they've dominated the game. So there's obviously got to be something in that. So and that is an accepted reality of sport, is that you definitely have to have that. It's part of motivational theory that is definitely accepted, and it's been around for, that theory's been around for over 20 years, I think, and it was new and it was kind of revolutionary when it came along, and it's accepted practice now. So I think just communicating the fact that those are all the science says that you're going to have, if it is unstructured, focused on the process, or at least some level of that, then it's going to help your performance. And as I mentioned before, you do need the structured practice. You do need to kind of, shape all of those skills. But the way you build those skills and the way you enjoy it and increase your motivation is through all of that other stuff, that fun, playing, curiosity part.
Great, thanks, Martin. Next question comes from Andrew Lynn. It's a bit of a lengthy question, so bear with me, Martin. He says, when working with athletes on some of these mental skills, such as positive attitude, thought stopping, etc., he has normally told the athlete in advance that we would be focusing on mental skills training. But this means the athlete knows what is going to happen, and sometimes the effectiveness of the training isn't quite as good as if they didn't know about it. So like in a match situation. Would you suggest working on some of these skills in a practice session without telling your student in advance, or is this a risky idea?
Yeah, I would say it's probably better to highlight it at the time, or between games, or just stopping training. So let training be the kind of milieu, or the matches be the milieu for the skills you're trying to teach. It's you that's trying to teach those skills. So you might be trying to teach forehand volley one day, and so you can still play games and still focus on the forehand volley, and while they're not necessarily thinking that's what they're practicing. And it's the same with mental training, is that that's the skill that you're trying to focus on, and so you can highlight that with your advice. So I think that's probably the way that I would do it, and it's usually self-identified as well. Usually, you get the player to think about it as well, like get them to identify, where they think they can be better with their attitude, how they deal with pressure, or their preparation, whether they're anxious or not, whether they can whether they're resilient or not. Like, just I would say, like, put them through like a little questionnaire, or get them to identify where they are, and then you can help them work on that, or create game situations that will highlight some of this kind of thing, some of these things that they can then work on. So yeah, I'm not sure if that's a very, very good answer, but I think it's the best I can do right now, Andrew.
Okay, next question, Martin, is from Tara Mullins. She asks, what percentage of your training was spent on mental training, and did this percentage change as you neared the end of your playing career?
Ooh, good question. I would say that I've thought that all of these things, I treated professional sport as an opportunity for me to go through all of this kind of stuff myself. Wasn't really to kind of look outwards and to kind of seek advice and direction. It was for me to figure out, and I kind of thought that was part of being an athlete. It's like, yeah, this is how athletes do it, is that they figure it out by themselves. And you kind of have these skills. You either have these skills or develop those skills. So that is true. Up to a point, that is true. But also, you can't achieve everything by yourself. And I think, I think you need that kind of engagement, the self-engagement, and in the process to identify what you need to work on. But sometimes you do need some help. Sometimes you need to go, okay, well, I just don't have the skills to be able to conquer that by myself. Or you just need, just like a little trigger, a little kick just in the right direction. Go, oh, that's what it is, or a little technique that helps you. So I would say that that was the process for me. Towards the end of my career, I probably was able to handle things better, but I probably still needed some help. There are probably things that I hadn't resolved that I needed to have some kind of interaction with. So I would say that's a good, that's that microcosm of, or that advice is a bit of a microcosm for how you want to approach the whole thing. Is that if any students listening to this, is that you don't want to just farm everything out to other people. You want to be engaged in that process, in whatever it is, whether it's mental, whether it's technical, whether it's movement, fitness, strength, whatever it might be. You still want to be engaged in that process. You don't want someone else necessarily to tell you what to do. But once you've engaged in it, once you know the areas that you need to work on, then you do need some help. Then it is good to be able to reach out to other people that have some expertise in this, and then to accept that advice, and that's going to help you get better. Don't let them come to you. Like, you figure it out first, but then seek help. I think that's what I would say to that, Tara.
Okay, next question comes from Spider Jones up in NWT. He asks, your philosophy, Martin, on between games mental support in competition.
Yeah, between games, mental support I think is useful. Yeah, I think it's definitely useful. But it depends upon what what the needs are. I think I can't remember a situation. Maybe I think it was maybe 20 years ago when Ernie Els, the golfer, was in a playoff for the British Open, and he didn't have a golf coach with him. He had a sports psychologist, and just to help him get into the right mindset and employ whatever techniques he needed to be able to focus, relax, enjoy the situation, just reminders. And so I would say that is, so between games, see, you don't want to necessarily give lots of different direction, like someone's brain, and they're not going to take in 10 pieces of information. They probably just need kind of like not memetics, but they probably need just kind of very, very simple themes that will resonate with them. And I suppose that's actually part of being a good coach, is to be able to know that your pupil or student is not going to be able to take in these 10 things, distill down to the things that they really need to focus on. There's one technical thing, there's a mindset thing, and that's it. There you go. Maybe 3 things at most, but I think that's what you're looking for. And does it have to be a coach, or can it be someone that just gives some good advice or understands the student, how they respond? Of course, I think that is true. Yeah.
Okay, our next question is from Barry Gifford. He asks, Martin, have you ever lost it with a referee and got your control back again, and how?
I mean, it's going to be difficult for me to deny this, but I think, yes, I probably have, but not very often. What I tended to find was that, it's very difficult to internalize everything, at least for me. Everyone's different. So sometimes for me, I'd need to kind of, just kind of let it out for, a few seconds, and, why is everything going this direction and not that direction? And just, express my frustration in some way, and but then refocus. So it's all about refocusing. So it's not, that little moment, that little outburst. You don't want that to last 2 minutes. Then you're Nick Kyrgios. Then it's not mature, right? You're going to affect your performance, and it's not nice to watch. And so, and you risk getting penalized and all that kind of thing as well. But I think it is also human to have frustration, have, maybe, in a pressure moment, being able to kind of let it out, but just in a respectful way. I think that's okay. But being able to refocus and kind of accept that okay, this happened, I can't change it, there it is. You got to deal with it and focus on what's ahead and what you can control from then. So at a personal level, I probably could have been better at that, but I think I was okay. I think there were people that were better than me at it. I think there were people that were worse than me at it. So I think I probably fit somewhere in the middle.
Okay, next question comes from a Paul. Would you hold meetings to address mental training sessions? For example, hold meetings in addition to practice, or use the practice to train mental strength?
I think a little bit of both. I don't focus too much on theoretical stuff with the mental thing, but I think we definitely talk about it. And it's a factor like anything else. It's that you discuss your grip, your strings, your the type of shoes you wear, and then obviously every part of movement and hitting the ball and what you're trying to do, and strategy is another thing that you look at. And it is also very important, but I would say it has to be in a practical sense as well. So I would say discussing it a little bit off the court and making it just another more variables that you have to practice and get better at. But then it's very apparent, like when your students are playing, it's very apparent to see what's going on. So I think, as I think there's a question before about this, I think from Andrew, I think I think having the discussion, having an awareness that that those are variables, and I think that I give you some good ideas of what those variables are in terms of confidence, in terms of concentration, focus, handling pressures, new normal, nerves, like a few different ideas. Knowing how identifying those, and you can even talk to your students about it. see if they can let them kind of figure out whether, like, give themselves a number out of 10 at how good they are, help them kind of understand whether it's attitude. You can maybe change attitude from off court. Some techniques you can change from off court, but a lot of the stuff is you're only going to see when people are under pressure. But then is to be able to identify that. So I would say match practice is good for that, you know, and not just match practice and, okay, let's play a game at the end or a best of 3 or something like that. Like, as part of training, play matches. Like, treat it as a proper match. Treat it like it's a competition match. Like, warm up, eat well hours before, do your long warm up, and then treat it like a proper match. And then you'll be able to identify those moments and how you deal with pressure and how you perform. So I think a little bit of both.
Okay, next question comes from a WM. Asks, Martin, who is the most mentally strong athlete in squash or any sport that should be a role model for up-and-coming athletes like WM?
Whew. I mean, you have to look at the guys and the girls that are you know, at the highest level, and just the way that they compete. I mean, I think Ali Farag is very impressive. I mean, huge self-belief, and always did, really. But also he doesn't tend to argue with the referee and things like that. He's, you know, every now and again, you know, just he'll kind of, you know, you'll query, but it's just the way he handles pressure. And you can see that when bad luck happens, he responds to it, and he's not going to let that overwhelm, you know, and overwhelm the whole situation and take away a possible result. He wants to win. He's a winner. And so he's going to do the right things to make sure that he's always focused on that. I think Raneem El-Walaili, you know, you can tell that she's quite a fiery character, but she uses it in the right way. She doesn't let that spill over too much. She uses it on the court and kind of, and is very respectful. I think you need to look at the top players, because a lot of those, there's a lot of very talented players that are just, because they don't possess the skills to be able to be resilient and, you know, have respect and to be able to handle their impulses, they don't become as successful as they should be. So I think it is a big factor when it comes to the high level. I would say look at the top players, look at the top 3 or 4 girls and guys and on the PSA, and I think you'll find that as well with. If you look at tennis as well, that's a good one to compare it to. It's like, you know, just how respectful and you know, that winning attitude, and they're going to do everything they can to win, but be respectful at the same time. And it's great to see.
Okay, this appears to be our last question, Martin, unless anyone else has other questions. This final question says, at the top level, on a percentage basis, how important is mental training versus physical training versus technical training versus strategic training?
Okay, I mean, you kind of put me on the spot. I would say that in terms of an exact percentage, I would say there's probably also a process as well. I think that it's you definitely want to have a good attitude just when you know, right from the outset, and but then you want to focus on physical, technical, strategic, and then I would say the mental thing probably is last, but it depends what it is. Attitude, you want to get right at the start. Attitude is like, that's how you're going to approach it. Anything that deals with how you're going to approach something, you want to get it right at the start. And you know, understand what you're getting into. This, the game is competitive. You're going to be under pressure. You're going to have to control your impulses. You're going to get frustrated. You're not going to get what you want. You're going to get bad luck. All these kind of things. How are you going to deal with it? What's your attitude going to be like? So I would say attitude comes first, probably before anything. And then I would say that's a big part. You know, whatever you say, 10%, 20%, it's like attitude is very important. It's fundamental. Technical is fundamental. Physical is obviously fundamental. I'd put those at 20-20 or 30-30, or maybe even more. And then at the end, I would say all of the other stuff. You know, identifying how you deal as a competitor. Being a competitor is a skill. And some of the skills are listed in this webinar, like how you deal with pressure, how you deal with bad luck, how quickly you can refocus and just, okay, new normal, get on with it. This is what it is. You know, how you respond under pressure, whether it's from you or for a team. It's like how you deal with it. Does it make you focus, or do you get nervous about it? What do you do about that? So I would say attitude, fundamental. All the other stuff in the middle, the last 10% is how you cope with how good a competitor you are and how you cope with the pressure.
Okay, great. We've got one more question in the chat box, and I think in the interest of time, we'll make this the last question, and then if anyone has additional questions, we can follow up with Martin through email. So this last question, Martin, is from Joseph. He says, "Do you think Greg Gauthier changed his mental attitude to move up to the top of the rankings?"
Well, first of all, hey Joe. Yes, I think he did. I think he was very linear in the way that he played before. I think he basically tried to copy Jonathan Power. That's what Greg did, and he was just very snappy, and his movement was fairly similar, and low center of gravity, very small. So the way he played was very linear. He couldn't change his game. He didn't really use height that well, and but he was very fast and snappy, and he was obviously very good, but he was limited in some way. And I think at some point he changed his game where he could play this kind of slow up and down the wall, more precise, less snappy, and wasn't his best game, but he could do it in how he needed to do it. So I think he needed to. Yeah, I think he changed his attitude at that point. Not at that point, but I think it's like he changed his game, which means that you have to have a certain kind of openness of perspective to do that when it's not you feel as though it's not your game and not your best interest. And but then he also lost. I think he hadn't won a major tournament. He was number 1, and I think he'd lost in a couple of finals where he had match points. And I think that at that point, I think he changed his attitude a little bit, which allowed him to eventually get the win. But he obviously didn't change too much because it's part of who he was. That was the energy that he carried, was part of what made him a great player in the first place. So I think he just adjusted a little bit, probably just through experience, to know that he didn't want to let something go that he had before. And I know the French Federation, they're very they tend to conglomerate their sports, and so they have good practices for all the sports. So I know that he would have definitely got some good help with how to deal with that. So I noticed a slight adjustment, but I think there's also important to say that slight adjustment technically, slight adjustment mentally, but he never got away from his core energy, which is what made him great anyway.
Great. Thank you, Martin. And thank you, everyone, for attending today's Heath Hints webinar on mental training. This would be the last Heath Hints for the next few weeks, but we will be back with some more and later in the summer and in the fall. For those coaches that are still on the webinar, just a friendly reminder, we have one more Squash Canada Coach PD webinar scheduled for next Wednesday, June 10th. It is called Building a Positive Parent Culture, presented by Glenn Mulcahy from Paradigm Sports. It is a very informative and educational session on how to engage parents, not deal with them, but engage. So I encourage you to register for that webinar, and we look forward to seeing you on that one. Otherwise, thank you again for attending, and thank you to Martin for such a great informative presentation.
Thanks all. Cheers.